Might as well kick it off with Glenn Kessler, because I think this is really interesting. I heard you guys talking about it on your show too. I think this is about more than just Kessler taking the buyout. It's the death of the fact checker. The model was flawed. It was loathed by half the country. It only targeted half the country. And it's also a comment on what's happening over at the Washington Post now that Jeff Bezos is going through like a mini Mark Zuckerberg reformation when it comes to his media properties and perhaps even himself. I mean, one thing I'll say about his marriage to Lauren Sanchez is it seems to have revitalized his testosterone, which tends to make you a Republican. Okay. Tom,
oh my gosh.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I do think you're right about, look, the fact checking thing. This was something that came, basically blossomed around when Trump came into office, right? And we were constantly getting these, Trump's told X number of lies and PolitiFact and all of that. I mean, PolitiFact was around longer than that. But it really did show that these fact checkers, it's in the eye of the beholder. When you're only fact checking Republicans, never fact checking Democrats, they lost credibility, with the way that they were conducting themselves in their work. And, you mentioned people going to Substack and them sort of exposing their biases or freeing themselves. That's one of the great things about Twitter and now X over time is that's when you really started learning about these journalists who were supposed to be objective. They would get on X or Twitter at the time and post like this crazy left-wing stuff and just expose themselves. And so I think that was part of the whole loss of credibility of the journalism industry, and the fact checking was part of that. And so, Glenn Kessler, he wrote this really long thing. I said on our show, I said the first thing you could say is Glenn Kessler really needs an editor.
Needs an editor. I heard you say that.
Yeah, because he wrote like 3,000 words on this. But he was talking about how he would, when he would fact check Democrats, he would get an earful from his readers at the Washington Post, because that's what these organizations have become. The Washington Post, the New York Times, they're catering to a liberal audience, and they become captured. And anytime they try and do anything that offends the sensibilities of their readers, they get mau-mau'd into basically towing the line. But B, it also presents a sort of a financial issue for them when people start reading, boycotting and losing readers because maybe they, said something nice about President Trump or something. It's a real conundrum that the industry has found itself in, and Glenn Kessler has been one of the players in that over the last, couple of decades.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Andrew? Is he and are people at the Washington Post who are getting fired, like on the editorial team, or taking the buyout, just coming to grips with the reality, which is it's very hard in 2025 America to have a totally objective news source. Most publications have a point of view, and I really think my own opinion is the future is just owning it and proceeding accordingly, and to stop pretending like you're objective, like the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Chicago Tribune and others have been trying to do, even though we know it's not true.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, this piece. Kessler kind of agrees with you because he starts the piece by talking about his meeting with the publisher. And when the publisher asks him, how do we get more Fox viewers to read the paper? He says, why would we do that? That's just going to tick off our base readership. So he sort of admits that he thinks that basically the Washington Post it's a bad business move to actually try to attract these other readers. And the other interesting thing about the piece is at the end, he talks about the buyout, and very, very straightforward about it. I give him credit for this. Says, hey, at the end of the day, there was a financial incentive for me to take the buyout. Because I would have been working for 4 more years for free if I hadn't taken the buyout. So interesting piece. And, I like to think that objective journalism will continue in some way. And I think if you go to RealClearPolitics, we try to give you some of that. We try to balance articles so you get
the best argument on both sides. But we may from both sides, but finding original reporters who are truly objective and unbiased is very tough, but that's the reason RealClearPolitics.com has been my main source of news for the past 15 years is because you pull from both sides. So I know I'll be reading, a righty's article or a lefty's article, but you have both represented, which I really think is the future. It's just too hard to find reporters in today's day and age who can keep their own points of view and their own biases out of the pieces. I much more respect, frankly, an MSNBC that just owns it or a Fox that owns it. And then you know exactly what the bias is. The ones that are the most irritating are places like the Washington Post, which whatever Kessler says is not owning it, has not been owning it, has been trying to tell us democracy dies in darkness, except went totally dark during the Biden years, Tom.
Yeah. And look, if for people who aren't familiar with Real Clear Politics, we have in our center column, we list the top 17 sort of opinion pieces. They're mostly from the opinion pages, and they're arguments. And you're right. We do sort of, the lefties and the righties, and we pair them together and let our readers decide who they agree with or disagree with. But on the left column, we do these basically sort of news stories and analysis stories, and we call them sort of news modules on topics of the day. There's usually one about the Trump administration. Today, there's something on the redistricting wars. And those are more news stories, but it's the same concept, Megyn, which is, we go out and we look at 10 different versions of the same story, one from the Washington Post, one from the Washington Times, one from the Wall Street Journal. And we try and find the one that we think is sort of most representative of the truth. And sometimes based on what the headline is, based on what the lead of the article is. And so we're able to pick and choose which story. But if you're just relying on the Associated Press, for example, you are going to get a vastly skewed, opinion or perspective on what the news is. Or if you're just relying on the New York Times or just on the Washington Post, you need to have conservative news sources. I mean, it's, you go watch Bret Baier's show, for example, which I think is probably the best news show on cable TV. And then you watch, one of the network broadcasts, ABC, CBS, you name it. And they're presenting completely different perspectives on what the news of the day is. And the network news, and they've done this for a long time. They'll ignore stories that don't fit their narrative or that they just don't want to report, which half the country's really interested in when we talk about Russiagate or some of these other stories. So you do have to be a real discerning news consumer, and you still have to go to, conservative sources. But there is still some decent reporting that is done in the Washington Post and New York Times. But, it's getting more and more like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It has to be on things that don't have a political angle. If it's something that doesn't have a political angle, you can maybe trust them, maybe. But where they don't have a clear horse in the race. But it's rare, but if they're doing some big expose on some local, I don't know, story where a politician got blown up, politically speaking, that is, you might be able to trust them. But when it comes to national politics or anything involving Donald Trump, do not trust them. People know that. And Glenn Kessler, I don't know if he gets it or not. I mean, you pointed out, Andrew, the point about how he's okay, the question was, how do we appeal to Fox viewers? What should the Post do to appeal to more Fox News viewers, he was asked. And he writes, I used to cover diplomacy, so I knew how to keep a poker face, even as the hair on the back of my neck prickled. Prickled is the right word. We have to remain true to our journalistic principles, I said. We have to tell the truth. I paused and added, they may not like that because it would conflict with what they've been hearing. The nerve of this guy whose fact checks included giving Tim Walz a pass on his military lies, including dismissing the Biden videos as cheap fakes, and even now is dismissing the Russiagate stories coming out of Tulsi Gabbard as, lies made up, there's no there. He's worried about the right wing not knowing the truth if it hit them in the face.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and if you've ever seen this in the Post, they had this Pinocchio's scale that they use, which is really kind of, I guess, seemed clever at the time, but over time kind of boxed them in a little bit. And, I think, as Tom said, that the whole sort of fact-checking movement or trend is it maybe run its course, and I think that's probably a good thing. I think that it might be time to retire that as a sort of trope, because it is just bias sort of dressed up as objectivity, and that makes it all the worse to me. It's one thing to sort of have a news story and have it be biased, but another thing to sort of like announce to the world that you are fact checking and then use that to be biased. Makes it all the more insulting to me.
You're right. That's
good,
extra
Megyn?
Insulting. Correct. Go ahead, Tom.
You know what would be good? I mean, if they wanted to be sort of fair and honest about it, is fine. Have Glenn Kessler, have a liberal fact checker, and hire a conservative fact checker, and run their columns side by side, and they can pick and then we get, at least, again, you'd have both perspectives represented. You could read them both, and you could decide which one you agreed with or didn't agree with. But I mean, for every single fact check that Glenn Kessler did on Trump or Republican, you could have done easily another one on a Democratic lie or falsehood that was being told that just got omitted, or they just passed over. So hire a conservative fact checker, Washington Post.
They won't. It's not consistent with their ideology. I mean, I've told a story before, but in 2016, I was asked by many of the top big tech companies to go out to Silicon Valley and to speak to their executives about bias in the news. Like, they were all shocked. Trump won. Whatever. We totally missed it. How did we miss it? We don't understand Republicans. And I did. And I said the same thing to all of them. You need to get actual, real, live Republicans working on your editorial boards and your editorial decisions and your fact-checking groups and your censorship groups, whatever groups you're having that is touching the news. You need, not Nicole Wallace, real, live Republicans, the real kind. The kind that scare you, that wear the MAGA hat. You need those people on your teams if you're genuinely concerned about fighting bias. And you know how many listened to me? None. Not one did it, because they're too ideologically committed to their leftist point of view. Okay, here's a preview. Everybody should download Mark's show to watch the full, because I haven't seen it myself because it was just being taped as we were getting ready for air. But Steve Krakauer, our executive producer, has said it's a barn burner. It's a good one, and you can watch it when it posts later today. Mark Halperin, next up with Mark Halperin. Go ahead and download. You should already be downloading and following that show. But here is a preview of his interview with Glenn Kessler, which got pretty contentious.
How could it be that I see the Post as fundamentally anti-Trump in every day, in every crevice of every story, practically, and you say we are down the middle by the book, and the fact that our readers are liberal is because we're in Washington, D.C.? How could that be?
Well, okay. First of all, it's because you're wrong and I'm right, Mark. I am in the new. I was in the newsroom and I watched how the stories were put together and what the editorial discussions were. So now that I am away from the newsroom and I'm going to read it as an ordinary reader, I will have based on the comments you've made to me, I will have an open mind to see what I see. But I do know when. It's not like people in the newsroom are saying, we've got to get Donald Trump. We've got to write this story. We're going to slant it in a way that is negative to Donald Trump.
It's more, I agree with you. It's more insidious. It's more insidious than that. Some ways it'd be more comforting to me if they said, we're not trying to be objective. We think Donald Trump's bad for the country. He's against abortion rights. He's corrupt. He's a liar. Look at all the 4 Pinocchios he gets. We need to protect Joe Biden and destroy him. That'd be better. Instead, and again, I just go back to Glenn. I just go back to 2 facts. Your audience, by your own acknowledgement and by every indication, is super liberal.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. And listen to him. Now that he's left WAPO, I'm open-minded to see what I see. Oh, great, Glenn. We can't wait until you try to exercise your open-mindedness. Would have been wonderful if you did that while employed by the Washington Post as their fact checker. But sure, welcome to the team of sanity. And then it's not like people in the newsroom are openly saying, let's get Donald Trump. I mean, and I take Mark's point too, but it's like there's no need to. That's what he's trying to say, Tom. There's no need for people to openly say that. It is the unspoken mission of everyone who gets hired there, and frankly, of who would want to work there in the first place these days.
That's right. And this did happen when, the media sort of threw in openly, some cases openly, with the resistance when Trump was first elected in 2016 and said, we are going to, after just treating Barack Obama for 8 years with these kid gloves and fawning over him and giving him all this glowing coverage, and then turned right around and said, we're going to hold Donald Trump to account, not let him tell lies, and democracy dies in darkness and all that bullshit. But Mark makes the good point that these folks don't see themselves as anti-Trump and that they're out to get Trump. They truly, in their own image, seem to, I'm a journalist, I'm objective, I'm just trying to get to the truth. And yet, through every layer of the journalistic process, from the writing to the editing to the choosing of the headlines to the photo editor, the choices that they make, that layers in all of these biases that they all have, whether they're conscious or subconscious, that to frame these stories. And, we've been the beneficiary, I should say, of a couple of, hit pieces from the New York Times over the last few years.
Yeah. Even though you guys got it right in the polling analysis and the averaging.
Yeah. 5 days before the election, they tried to, dump this story. But the point I'm trying to make is journalism now is just confirmation of narratives. They write the story, and then they'll send without including another point of view, and then they'll send you something like 20 minutes before they're going to publish and say, oh, here's what we're going to say, and do you want to respond to this? Instead of what journalism used to be, which was you go out and you talk to people, and the facts lead you to where they lead you.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it, see if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.